And again, let me say good morning to everyone. And Judge, it's good to be with you again. I don't think there have been too many days over the last 30 days when we have not been together. And, we're getting to the point, I've got on his glasses now. And True story. I mean, and the glasses came from Judge Emmett. So, and they had the right magnification. So I appreciate that. To the board members of Hurricane Harvey Relief Fund, donors, staff of the Greater Houston Community Fund, and Martin Kaminsky and his great folks at Interfaith Ministries, one of the nonprofit agencies that will provide services. We want to thank them all and thank everyone for helping to raise the money. Almost $77 million has been donated to the fund. Judge Emmett and I found it. And we decided early on that it didn't make any sense to have one fund for the city, one fund for the county. And so we've been working together on everything else. It just made good common sense to work together on the fund as well. It's a local fund for local victims of the flood. Houston Strong came up strong with these donations, and more money is still on the way. Donations are still welcome also at houstonrecovers.org. As Houston gets back to business after the flood, it's time for the business of putting these donations to work for the people who need the relief. This morning, you will meet the board members appointed by the judge and myself to make sure the funds are distributed quickly but also responsibly and transparently so that they are used in the best way possible. That requires a fine balance between time and perfection. But what's more exciting is that we are here today to announce the recipients of the first set of grants from the fund. The money will go to trusted nonprofits at the grassroots relief organizations that are not new when it comes to meeting people's most essential needs right where they live. But first, I'm glad to introduce representatives of some of those who have been very generous to Houston. This is just some, not all. Sitco, Rafael Gomez, Vice President of Government and Public Affairs, and Brenda Rivera, GM Communications and Corporate Social Responsibility. Where are you all? There, right in front. And then from Verizon, Shamari Williams, the Managing Partner of Sales. Shamari. Waste Management, Tony Beck, Vice President of Corporate Communications and Community Relations. Thank you so very much. And then Walmart Foundation, Daniel Morales, Director of Government Relations. And then Aramco Services Company, I don't think Basil, the representative. Yeah, okay, back there in the back. Good to see all of you. And then at this point, let me stop and let me turn it over to County Judge Ed Emmett.
Thank you, Mayor. This is certainly more fun than some of the things we've had to do over the recent weeks. That is a true story about the glasses, by the way. He admired them once upon a time, and I said, well, they're very expensive, Mayor. I don't know that you can afford them. So next time I was at the car wash, I bought him a pair. And fortunately, they had the right magnification. The fact that we can smile and enjoy ourselves after Harvey speaks a lot. It is Houston strong, it is Harris County strong, and our community's done a remarkable job. The contributions that have come in, I can't say thank you enough. The interesting thing, or things that has to be pointed out, you have a flood, it doesn't recognize city limits or county boundaries or anything like that. And so the mayor and I early on decided we needed to work together, not just during the storm, but after the storm, so that the whole community recovered and recovered as quickly as possible. And so thank you, Mayor, for working side by side the way we have. Early on, after this fund was developed, we talked, and it was clear that the one thing that we had to do was make sure the money went to the people who needed it. And we live in a world that's a little bit cynical, imagine that, and they say, oh, where's this money going to go? And we wanted to be sure it was not going to government operations, it wasn't going to go to just ordinary expenses, and that, in fact, the politicians were really not going to be in charge of where it went. And so the great thing about our community is that we have people who are willing to step up, not only to make contributions, but to work. And so this fund was set up with a 12-member board, with a co-chair from the county and from the city, and then 5 appointed members from the county and the city. And so my role today is to introduce those people who are then going to be responsible for distributing these funds over the coming, I hope, only weeks or months that we get these out as soon as possible. The 2 co-chairs are Tony Chase and Bill Jackson. Bill Jackson is still in Pennsylvania, but Tony, I'll introduce you in just a moment. The city appointees are Dr. Ruth Lopez Turley, and I don't know who might be here. Basil Abul Hamayo, is that close to hopefully right? He's not here. Juanelle Heron, haven't seen her. Natalie Marks, and Ken Valek. And on the county side, co-chairs Bill Jackson, Mike Ballasis, William Taylor, Hattie Miranda, Janice Longoria, and George W. Strake III, better known as Trey. These are all people willing to step up, and this is, I started to say it's going to be a thankless task, but it's really not. There are going to be a lot of people very thankful for what this committee does, but there will never be enough resources to make everybody happy. I'll phrase it like that. But their job, and they've already gotten off to a great start, is to make sure that these funds are distributed to reputable organizations and that they get out to the people that are most in need. That's been the direction of the mayor. That's been my direction. And I think that this committee is well suited to do that. So at this point, I would like to turn this over to Tony Chase, who is the co-chair. And I believe Tony's going to talk about some of the early distributions.
Before you start with you, I do want to mention and acknowledge Tad Brown. Tad, I apologize for the Houston Rockets, Les Alexander, who have been very, very generous. So thank you, Tad, for being present.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Judge. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here today. My name is Tony Chase, and I was happy to answer Mayor Turner's call to serve as co-chair of this very, very important effort. I must note that my fellow co-chair, Bill Jackson, County's budget director, was unable to be here today, and I speak on behalf of both of us as well as the advisory board. I first want to thank Mayor Turner and Judge Emmett for the trust that you've placed in us to serve our community in this capacity. It's a great honor, and I thank you both. I also want to thank the more than 100,000 donors who contributed about $79 million thus far to the fund. It's such an incredible number. Average donation, less than $80. These gifts came in both large and small, and every single one of them has made a difference. The aim of the fund's board is simple. It's to be good stewards of the money entrusted to us by the donors and to ensure that these dollars are efficiently and effectively distributed to the organizations working most closely with the victims of the storm. We all know that the damage touched every part of our community. The effects were particularly devastating for the vulnerable communities with high concentrations of low-income, senior citizens, or disabled people. It is essential that we do this right and help this community get back on its feet. In our very first meeting, back on September 20th, it seemed like a long time ago, it's only about 10 days or so, I appreciated the board's frankness that we get these funds out as quickly as possible. And we agreed to embark on this initial round of funding targeted to distribute 10% of the funds collected thus far. I would like to thank the Greater Houston Community Foundation, specifically their president, Steve Maslin, and their chief philanthropy officer, Renee Wizik-Barrios, who accelerated their internal processes to meet this accelerated timeline. While we wanted to get these funds into the community quickly, we also wanted to ensure that the organizations that were grantees or that would be grantees were well qualified and had the capacity to utilize the funds in an effective and efficient manner. The foundation screened the applicants on a number of factors, including their capacity to provide services, past disaster recovery experience, overall operating budget, and their ability to execute their plans to disperse the funds within 90 days. Very important to us that this relief actually get to the victims as soon as possible. So all that said, today I'm pleased to announce the board has authorized the first round of grant funding totaling $7.55 million to be distributed to 28 organizations serving our community. This initial accelerated round of grants amounts to 10% approximately of the $79 million in total funds raised to date. We placed a particular emphasis on the critical need for temporary housing throughout the region, and I'm pleased that this money will go to help people in each and every zip code across the county. I'm particularly pleased to note that almost 60% of the funds are going to smaller organizations with annual operating budgets of less than $5 million. These are the organizations that are close to their communities and doing terrific work. All 28 of the organizations were selected because they already work with vulnerable populations and are already providing assistance to storm victims. So what happens with the rest of the funds? We are already working with the Greater Houston Community Foundation to develop specific criteria and an application process for future rounds. This will be established through an open RFP process to be announced soon, and I hope to get the next round of grants out in 30 days or so. I just want to pause on that. To help with this process, Bill and I, in our role as co-chairs, have appointed a grants committee composed of experts in grant making and disaster recovery, along with philanthropic leaders from across the community. The grants committee will utilize their expertise to review the applications and offer funding recommendations to the advisory board for approval. Members of the grants committee, and I wish you'd raise your hand if you're here today, include on the city side, Wai-Ping Sun, co-chair, Rice representative, and of council at Yetter-Coleman. Elizabeth Love, senior program officer, Houston Endowment. Kelly King Jackson, senior program officer, Simmons Foundation. Tanya Simon, program officer, Houston Endowment, and Joe Carcedo, vice president of programs for the Episcopal Health Foundation. On the county side, Jim Nutter, Harris County Budget Management Office, is their designated co-chair for the Grants Committee. That committee also includes Sarah Joseph of the Houston Rockets, Guy Hagstead of the Kinder Foundation, Jennifer Nelson of the Laura and John Arnold Foundation, and Carla Sines of the Laura and John Arnold Foundation. Depending on the response to the RFP, and as we continue to learn more about the various needs across the community, we may distribute the funds over the course of several rounds. We will determine that as we move forward. I do want to also extend special thanks to the Houston Endowment, who is underwriting a needs assessment being undertaken by the Kinder Institute that's been commissioned by the Advisory Committee. This will provide critical data to help guide the board and its grants committee moving forward. I want to repeat again that it's absolutely critical that we focus our efforts on meeting critical unmet needs of vulnerable communities with high concentrations of low-income senior citizens or disabled. So important. I should note also that we have been in contact with all of the other major funds involved in Hurricane Harvey relief. We believe it is critically important that we collaborate our efforts with them so as to most effectively to avoid duplication of funding and to most effectively and efficiently distribute funds to meet critical unmet needs. The needs assessment that our advisory board has commissioned will be made available to all of the other Harvey Relief Funds. And that's what this is all about, being good stewards of the money that was so graciously given to make a true difference in the lives of those who've been devastated by the storm. The needs are big, but the hearts of Houstonians are bigger. I am personally grateful, and I know that everyone on this board is grateful, to each and every person and organization who gave generously to this endeavor. And I must add, you can still add your name to that donor list. You can go to ghcf.org and give today. We continue to uncover need around almost every corner, and you can be assured that your gifts will be put to good use. Thank you very much.
Good morning. My name is Martin Kaminsky. I'm the president and CEO of Interfaith Ministries for Greater Houston. I have many awesome responsibilities now, but one is to represent the recipients that are listed on the screen. And I'd like to ask the nonprofit helping community to please stand and be recognized. Wave your hand so people know who's really doing the work. It is not the work. Thank you to all you leaders. This is not the work of any one agency, but a partnership of all of us, and we appreciate the confidence that Chairman Chase and the committee and the mayor and judge have put in us and all of our partners. It's an honor for me to speak today on behalf of Houston and Harris County's helping community to thank so many donors who've given generously to the Harvey Relief Fund. With over $7.5 million in grants today, you are making possible the critical work of 28 different nonprofit caring organizations to help our fellow neighbors get back on their feet and restart their lives. Your gifts are an amazing tribute to Houston's generosity, and these gifts will make the difference for so many families whose lives have been turned upside down by this storm. It truly demonstrates respect for thy neighbor. Many of our fellow nonprofits are doing amazing things to help Houstonians in need. I'd like to show you just a brief video overview of the work of Interfaith Ministries during and after the storm. One of our greatest responsibilities is to care for 4,300 homebound seniors, veterans, and people with disabilities. We are entrusted by them to deliver a hot meal every weekday and to make a friendly wellness check and make sure that they are safe and sound. After Harvey, it took our professional drivers, our volunteer drivers, and the Texas and National Guard to help us get these meals out. It's our sacred duty, and we just could not let any senior go hungry. Let's take a look at the work. That work is not possible without the collaboration of so many people. This is just a part of what your gifts make possible. Your gift also helps refugees who've come to Houston recently. Our refugee resettlement program, coordinated with the U.S. State Department, will bring some 600 new Americans to Houston this year. Houston has always welcomed these new Americans, but this year Harvey brought water that flooded the cars and disrupted the lifelines of these newly hired refugees who are working to sustain themselves and be on their own within 6 months of their arrival. The storm, the damage to their cars, their inability to work brought extraordinary challenges to our refugees who've already experienced many perils in their life. I'm proud to introduce Mohammed Muhaddin, who's with us today, one of our Iraqi refugees who arrived on November 8th of last year with his mother and sister. Mohammed works at a Walmart auto center, and he lost wages because he couldn't get to work. IM surveyed all of its refugees and offered help to people like Mohammed with rental assistance after the storm through your generous community donations. Mohammed, would you please stand and let us welcome you to Houston and to recognize, thank you. To recognize your tenacity in trying to keep your family together as you work to become an American citizen. This is the work we do every day to be a welcoming Houston for all. Finally, I want to tell you that Interfaith Ministries will continue the legacy of Volunteer Houston as it assumes operations for the placement of eager Houston volunteers who are willing to share their time with others in helping. I think you will be as Houston proud as I am to know the number of volunteers registered to serve our community doubled in this 1 month since the storm, from 52,000 volunteers to over 100,000 volunteers in our database and people ready and eager to serve. That's a whole village of people who want to help Houston organizations in need of extra hands and extra hearts. Your grant today enables us to stand up these additional volunteers and to quickly deploy them to hundreds of nonprofit agencies who are asking for help in our recovery. Every day after Harvey is a great new opportunity. Houston and Harris County have come together again in wonderful ways to prove that there is neither a storm nor a hurricane that is bigger than Houston's heart. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you on behalf of my fellow agencies for generously supporting our great city today and always. Thank you.
And at this point, we'll take any questions. So let me ask Anthony and Martin if y'all come back up on the stage. And if there are any questions, anyone be glad to take them.
A lot of questions from people on Facebook who either they lost their homes or their family did. They want to know how they can get some of this money. What should they do? Can individuals apply? Is it just going to groups? And if it is just going to groups, how can they get some of this help?
Well, I think the critical piece of information are the city help numbers. They are properly staffed in 211 to help people have been affected by the storm, and then they will be put in the right place. One additional thing I might mention is that a material part of the funding in this first funding round is going to case management. Specifically to help guide those victims to help to the places that can help them the quickest.
And is it only open to, another question is it only open to maybe low-income people without insurance, or is it also available for some middle-income earners, maybe some people that did have flood insurance, but it's still not enough?
So we are open to mitigate and help address the victims of the storm. As the judge and the mayor mentioned, regrettably, there aren't enough funds to fully mitigate and address all the ills. And so those ultimately have to be prioritized and addressed in that way. But everyone who's been affected by the storm should reach out to us, and we will apply the assistance as best we can.
211 is the number?
Yes, sir.
Or do you suggest people, like, should they go, like, say if we put the list of the charities, the first list of grants, that you guys, I mean, if they live in the 5th Ward, do they call the 5th Ward Community Center? If they live on the west side, do they call the west side? You know, I mean, is that how they go about it?
Renee, you want to speak to that?
Yes, I think that would be it.
Why don't you come up? Yeah.
Can you, I think that the point is, like, you're distributing $7 million to all
Yes.
these agencies, right? So the concept is, like, if I'm watching this at home on TV, how do I get a cut of that $7 million, and where do I go about finding that? I think.
Sure. Good afternoon. As Mr. Chase suggested, calling 211 is a great way to get the process started, but certainly all the grantees that are on the list, particularly all of the assistance ministries which serve their communities, are a great place to start. So as you suggested, if you live on the west side, contacting West Houston Assistance Ministries or Memorial Assistance Ministries, those organizations will also be happy to help people. Or in Humble Area Assistance Ministries, North Channel, we particularly supported, the advisory board chose to support many of these ministries because they are actively helping families right now. And every organization that's receiving a grant is actively giving financial assistance and case management to families.
Hey, can you talk to us a little bit about why the pot of money is not, like, you know, there's not a individual, say, hotline where they can call and, you know, they get, I don't know, like $400, like how the Red Cross try to have it, or things like that. Why you choose not to go that
Well,
route?
the last thing we wanted to do was set up a whole new bureaucracy to judge people's needs. We have organizations out there that already do that. And so it would have been a nightmarish situation if the mayor and I had said to individuals, call us, call this fund and apply for direct aid. We couldn't set up a bureaucracy big enough to judge that. We see what's happening already, and let me be clear, this does not supplant FEMA nor the DSNAP program or any of those that are out there right now. Those are still in process, and people who are eligible need to be going through that process. These organizations are already in existence. They're already set up to provide direct assistance to individuals and to families, and so that's why working through them makes the most sense.
Do most of these organizations already have a plan set up for how they're going to disperse the funds, or is it?
Well, I can speak on behalf of Interfaith Ministries that we have several plans that we requested funding for. One is $100,000 to do minor home repairs in the homes of senior citizens on the Meals on Wheels program. So in that effort, our caseworkers and client service staff are aware of urgent needs of people to get a ramp or stairways or some modest means. And we'll be working in partnership with Rebuilding Together Houston and the Fuller Ministries, who have construction expertise, to bring the building supplies and the case assessment they need. We'll be using some of the money also to add to our client service staff so we can better respond to the needs of the community. If people need Meals on Wheels assistance, they can certainly call Interfaith Ministries or the Area Agency on Aging, which is responsible for helping that no senior goes hungry in our city.
If I can add something very briefly, please bear in mind that not one dime of the money is going through our governmental entities. So it's not going through the city of Houston. It's not going through Harris County. Then the question is, how do you get the money to the people who need it the most, who stand in need? And the best way, the best vehicles of doing that is through the nonprofits. But the goal is to go through the nonprofits to get to the people who, in fact, are needing the money, where we are complementing the monies that are being given by FEMA and other entities, okay? And so when we're talking about people who are seniors, especially, special needs, people in low-income communities, people who may not have flood insurance, because there are a number of people who may be middle income, but this storm has pushed them down even more, so they need help as well. And so it's everyone who's been impacted by this storm is intended to be benefited as much as possible from the relief that is being provided from very generous donors. And so we're going through the Greater Houston Community Foundation. I would certainly encourage people to contact the various nonprofits that exist and let them know what their particular needs are. Contact the Greater Houston Community Foundation, let them know what their needs are. But it's no geological barrier, in a sense, no social economic barrier. The point is that there are a lot of people who are in need of housing being rehabbed. Okay, they're living in homes. You may not see the water on the outside, but the damage is already on the inside. There are people who are in need trying to start all over again. Their house literally is on the curb. All of their furniture and stuff are on the curb. And now they're living just from paycheck to paycheck. And so they are struggling, and we are talking about middle-income families. So the whole notion is for us not to leave anyone behind to the extent we can help them. Even if it's a little bit, it's more than what they had before. But the best way to do that is through the nonprofits, since none of this money is going for governmental services, and you have to have a process in place in order for it to meet the end user, if that makes sense.
But is it fair, though, to say, just hearing what you guys talked about, seeing that this is more geared toward people who have the least? I think sometimes when people kind of contact the media on Facebook and social media, they're talking about their houses and stuff tend to be, whether that's flood insurance or FEMA, it feels like it's not targeted toward, I guess, those type of folks. More people have less, or is there?
Well, I would say even, and Judge can add to this, even if you get assistance from FEMA, it may not be much, and you still need some help. And let me tell you, you may have been doing okay. You may have considered yourself to be middle income. But when Harvey came along, it put all of your stuff on the street. Well, you need help, okay? I was in Kingwood, for example, and one of the ladies stood up and said, "Look, I need help," okay? So you can be low income and a senior, or low income just family, and you already on the margins. The storm just pushed you further down. And you don't have many options, so you're in that house, but that house needs to be rehabbed as quickly as possible. We need dollars to flow through these nonprofits to help them to rehab their home, complementing what FEMA may be getting. You may have been middle income, okay, but all of your stuff is on the curb, and you've exhausted your savings and your bank account. Well, you need help too, okay? And so to the extent we can, I think we ought to be providing assistance to those individuals as well. I don't think this is a time where we exclude, because need is need. I don't care where you are, okay? Need is need. But the money is not going to flow through the city. The money is not going to flow through Harris County. So how do you get the money to where the people are? Well, credible nonprofits who do this stuff every day. That's what they do, okay? That's what they do. And you have to have a process to get to the end, to the person who needs it. Otherwise, you just have chaos and no rules, no guidelines, Judge.
Yeah, I agree with everything the mayor just said, but let me add one more thing. The storm, in many ways, was easy. The recovery is going to be hard. The recovery is going to be long. And so even if somebody gets DSNAP, the special food vouchers, or food card that's available, that's only for 60 days. People aren't going to recover in 60 days from this. There are still going to be people who are trying to catch up, and that's where organizations like these that are being funded can identify those folks who have the needs and then can help them. We're going to be in this a long haul. I was going to say at least a year from now, maybe years from now. People are going to be still trying to recover, and we're still going to have some people who aren't going to be able to get back in their homes. As if you've noticed, we're already talking about buyouts. Well, buyouts are great, but you still have to then go live somewhere else. So these groups hopefully can help in that process. So we've got to make sure that this doesn't go off the front page. This doesn't go out of the front of our mind. 30 days from now or 60 days from now. This is going to be a long-term process, and that's why we both felt it was very important to turn it over to professional organizations who do this day in and day out. And I suspect that many of those organizations are going to get a lot of phone calls now and say, how do we get on Meals on Wheels, or how do we register with Baker Ripley or any of the groups to get that assistance? And frankly, that's what we want. We want people to reach out to these organizations that are already there and that can provide this kind of day-to-day help. So it's not just a one-time check that somebody gets. It's got to be, like has been mentioned, case management. People have got to know how they can get through this entire process of recovery. No, Red Cross does some things very, very well, and they will always be a partner. And anytime you have an event, you'll see that Red Cross is there. They have their own funding sources. So in terms of this, yes, we'll continue to work with Red Cross. And in fact, I had a meeting personally with Gail McGovern, who's the CEO, and we talked about they need to define what they can do well and what maybe they need to let other people do. So we all learn from every experience comes along. We learn something, and something always is going to go a little bit wrong. But, speaking for myself and I dealing with my friend the mayor, we both have this attitude of let's just keep moving forward. Let's not worry about going back and pointing fingers at this, that, or the other. Let's move forward and make sure that the right people are doing the right things for future events, although I'd just as soon not have a future event like this. I don't know about you.
Same.
Have you set a deadline or sort of a goal date of getting all of the money in the fund dispersed? And with these grant recipients on the board, for example, are they going to have to report back to you in some sort of way as to how they've spent their money and what goals they've accomplished?
The short answer is yes and yes. In terms of distributing the money, it's our goal to distribute the money in approximately 9 to 12 months. Now, that said, we've yet to get the needs assessment. We should get it in a few weeks. We've yet to fully collaborate with the other relief funds. We have a presentation to the Grants and Advisory Committee on Thursday from the housing departments, city and the county, from disabilities office of the city, from FEMA, so that our grants committee better understands how to fill the gaps and be effective in their funding. So the short of it is that we've just gotten started, but we plan to distribute this money. Our target is 9 to 12 months. What was your other question? Right, grant structure. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Part of, and I should say this in response to that first, this money, the $7.55 million being granted today, wasn't simply given to the 28 organizations, the 28 nonprofits, and with a do your best. This was specifically, they laid out specific plans of how they would create positive impacts and benefits in specific communities. And those benefits and impacts will be measured over the time of that they distribute the grant, which, as you know, has to be fully distributed within 90 days, and then there will be a report back after that so that their effectiveness can be fully measured.
Let me thank you all for coming, Judge. It's always good to see you again. And this is step one. But Judge and I, the county and city, we are committed to meeting people's needs throughout our whole area as much as possible. I guess sometimes there are perfect storms, but no perfect recovery. Okay. So let me thank again all of those, the donors who are all here, those who are not here. Appreciate that. But now, we're going to move forward to meet the needs of people out there. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.